What's going on, Giants fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Allen Hour. I'm your host, Dylan Allen, and welcome back into the channel. I know it's been a while since I've posted a video on the channel since college football ended with Indiana winning the national championship over Miami. Needed a little bit of a break, had the flu while that was going on, and a bit of a mental reset with just work and everything going on. So I'm a bit less busy now, so I can get this video out there. And I also wanted to wait a little bit just to see where the Giants would go after hiring John Harbaugh. I have that video up on the channel if you haven't seen that already, but I kind of wanted to see some of the smaller positions on the staff get filled before I made this big video on who I want for certain positions. The defensive coordinator position already being filled. The big story, though, the Giants still looking for an offensive coordinator. And in this video, I'm going to give you a couple candidates that are remaining, that are still out there, that I think the Giants should hire as the offensive coordinator under John Harbaugh, and that I'd be totally okay with either of them. And then going to touch on some other names that have been circulated in the New York media and all over just the NFL media in general, in my opinions on some of those guys as well. Expect a Super Bowl preview video coming up this week between the Seahawks and the Patriots. It's going to be an awesome game. I think the line right now, 4.5 in favor of the Seahawks. So Vegas is telling you who they think is going to win, and it's by a decent margin. So it should be a fun one. Again, that video will be up later in the week. But in this video, I'm going to break down the offensive coordinator vacancy for the New York Football Giants. So if you enjoy what you're watching, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, give me all of your comments on some of the guys that I mentioned in this video. Maybe you have a different opinion on some of them, but make sure you leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe, and let's get into it. So just to kind of recap the Giants' offseason thus far in terms of the coaching staff, John Harbaugh obviously hired as the head coach. That was back on January 17th. And since then, he's had just about three weeks or so of time to assemble his staff. And a lot of it has to do with familiarity with the Baltimore Ravens. And this was to be expected, you know. We knew going into this, once the news was official that Harbaugh was brought on as the head coach, that he was going to bring in, honestly, as many people as he could from Baltimore. And the only caveat was how many of these guys the Ravens would allow Harbaugh to poach. And there has been a list of names that they have not made available to interview for certain positions, but there were some that were with Baltimore last year, that had been with Baltimore in years past, and were with other teams in the prior couple seasons or so that he was able to bring on to this year's Giants staff. One of those names, Denard Wilson, who is going to be the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants. He was hired on January 25th. His recent resume consists of coaching the secondary, the defensive back rooms with various teams over the years. It starts with the Jets most recently in 2017 to 2020. He was their defensive back coach. Later on, he turned into their defensive passing game coordinator and defensive back coach, so he just added that title on to it. Then he was with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2021 as the DB coach, and in 2022 adding on that defensive passing game coordinator title, and then went on to the Ravens, which is where he coached with Harbaugh for one season as their defensive back coach in 2023. And most recently, he was the defensive coordinator for the Titans under Brian Callahan, who was fired just about 6 weeks into the season this year. He was their coordinator there for 2 seasons, 2024 and 2025. Just to name you a few defensive backs that he has coached over the years, and again, this is while he was coaching the defensive back room and secondary room. While with the Jets, he coached Jamal Adams. He earned All-Pro honors with the Jets during Denard Wilson's tenure with the New York Jets. He coached James Bradberry, and Giants fans, we all know that name. And say what you want about the guy, but he earned second-team All-Pro honors during Wilson's tenure with the Eagles. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he led the league in interceptions with 6 while only playing 12 games. I believe that was in 2021. Correction, that was in 2022 that Gardner-Johnson led the league in interceptions. And then Darius Slay had a Pro Bowl nod with Philly as well. And then when he went on to Baltimore, Kyle Hamilton earned an All-Pro selection in 2023. So a good track record for Denard Wilson working with those defensive backs, those guys in the secondary room. And that was kind of his bread and butter. And listen, he got hired to be the defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. I know a friend personally from work who's a Titans fan. He tells me that Denard Wilson did a good job with the defense, despite the Titans not being the best of teams over the last couple of seasons. But again, this is a team that just drafted their future quarterback with Cam Ward with the #1 overall pick going into last year. So they're trying to figure things out. And it didn't help him that his coach was fired. The guy who hired him to be on the staff, he was fired in October of last season. So there's familiarity with Harbaugh. Again, 2023, he coached with Baltimore. So that's our defensive coordinator. Now on to the special teams coordinator / assistant head coach, Chris Horton, hired back on January 25th. He'd been with Baltimore and Harbaugh since 2014. That's 11 seasons. So this year with the Giants will be his 12th season under Harbaugh. He was the assistant special teams coach from 2014 to 2018. Then he was promoted to the special teams coordinator in 2019, and that's a position that he held until last season. Now Harbaugh brings him to the Meadowlands, and again, it'll be his 12th season with Harbaugh with the special teams unit, and he'll be leading that room and an assistant head coach as well. The defensive passing game coordinator / secondary coach, this is the most recent hire of the bunch, Donald D'Alessio. I hope I'm saying that right. He was hired on January 30th. He coached with the Kansas City Chiefs from 2021 to 2024 under Steve Spagnuolo, former longtime Giants defensive coordinator. We all know and love Spags. He was their safeties coach under Spagnuolo during that time, was a part of 2 Super Bowl titles with the Chiefs as well. Then in 2025, he went on to coach in Baltimore under Harbaugh as his defensive back coach. So some more Baltimore familiarity. So far, these 3 hires, what do they all have in common? They have coached with Harbaugh in Baltimore at some point. So those are the 3 major hires. There have been some smaller hires within. There have been there have been many coaches, I should say, and front office members from previous years that have been let go, that he is just ultimately cleaning house on some of those positions. But these were the main hires up to this point. And again, recording this on February 2nd, just around 4 o'clock. So this is the latest that we have as of February 2nd. So now that we got all of that out of the way, now time for the big question mark. It's the offensive coordinator position on this coaching staff. Currently still empty. The Giants still doing a bunch of interviews with various candidates, and I'll get to some of those names in a bit. But again, the reason being, Todd Monken, who was viewed as the clear favorite to fill this position, was rumored to pretty much be a done deal to have this position. He got hired to be the Browns head coach on January 28th, a bit of a shock to the NFL world, and it was a big shock to their defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, in fact, so much so that he told pretty much the coaching staff, the front office, the ownership, he told everybody that he's pretty much done. Might as well just count him out for next year, despite having a year left on his contract. That's just a side note, but ugly scene for Cleveland passing up on Jim Schwartz. So what does this mean for the New York Giants? Well, it means they have more homework to do. It means John Harbaugh has to look into other options, and not now that Monken is no longer available, which, again, believed by many was going to be his first option for this position. So here are a couple names that I have seen being rumored that are still that we're interviewing for other jobs around the NFL, for offensive coordinator jobs, that are still available and that are highly respected within the NFL, and some names that personally I think would be a good fit for the New York Giants, and importantly for Jackson Dart heading into his second season with the G-Men. Again, this is in no order. First name, Nate Scheelhaase. He's currently with the Los Angeles Rams as the pass game coordinator. He was also the offensive assistant and passing game specialist last season in 2024. So not last season, the year before that. So this is currently where he's at. Just to give you some background on him, before his time with the Rams, he was on the Iowa State coaching staff, yes, in college, from 2018 to 2023. He served as the running back coach in his first season there. Then he became the wide receiver coach for 2 seasons, and then they made him the running game coordinator, running back coach, and wide receiver coach, all one title for 2 seasons in 2021 and 2022. Then in his final season in 2023, he was promoted to offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. So working with Rocco Becht, who's now at Penn State, longtime quarterback at Iowa State, under Matt Campbell as well, who's another highly regarded, highly respected coach in the college football world. So then after that season in 2023, he took the job with the Rams in 2024 as the offensive assistant and passing game specialist, as I mentioned, and then was promoted to pass game coordinator, that is, in 2025. So Why do I want Nate Scheelhaase for the New York Giants? What do I think he brings to the table? Well, in 2024, Matthew Stafford had a career year despite being 37 years old. And by the way, he's turning 38 this week. He threw for over 4,700 yards, 46 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Those 46 touchdowns are the most in a single season that he's ever thrown in his career. And he's up in the running for an MVP with Drake May. And if Stafford were to win it, it'd be the first MVP award of his career. While I acknowledge Nate Scheelhaase does not call plays for the Rams, and he's also not their offensive coordinator, that's Mike LaFleur, who recently just got hired by Arizona to be their head coach, I do think that him being a part of this McVay tree for 2 seasons and learning a lot under a mind like that for 2 seasons brings a lot to the table, and in my opinion is invaluable experience. Just look at some of the coaches that have come from the McVay tree over the years. You might know a few, you might not know some of these guys, or you might not have known that they were linked to Sean McVay at one point during his Ram tenure as their head coach, which, by the way, he and their GM got extensions as of today. So Sean McVay not going anywhere for a long time with the Rams. But just to give you a few names of guys that have coached under Sean McVay over the years and where they are now. The first one on the list, Green Bay head coach Matt LaFleur was the OC for the Rams in 2017. Yeah, he hasn't won a Super Bowl with the Packers, but he's consistently winning games. He's always in the playoffs. I mean, this is kind of what we're looking for. The offense is usually pretty solid. Josh Jacobs is a terrific running back. How about Cincinnati? The Bengals head coach Zach Taylor was an assistant wide receiver coach in 2017, quarterback coach in 2018. Was then hired in 2019 as the Bengals head coach, and he holds that position now. He's been to a Super Bowl, obviously coaches Joe Burrow, coaches T. Higgins, coaches Jamar Chase. Offense has never been the issue with the Bengals. You can say what you want about Zach Taylor with how he has coached defensively and as a head coach, sure. But again, we're looking for an offensive coordinator here, so I don't really care about defense. Zach Taylor's a guy who knows how to coach offense. How about another name on the list? Washington. We're going to college, not the Commanders. Washington Huskies. Head coach Jed Fish. He was a senior offensive assistant in 2018 and the assistant offensive coordinator in 2019. He then went on to coach Arizona, which, if you watch college football, you've seen their emergence with quarterback Noah Fafita, Tetairoa McMillan. That ring any bells? Well, those were his guys at Arizona. Now he's at Washington in the Big Ten as their head coach, okay? Still not convinced? Let's go to Minnesota. How about their head coach, Kevin O'Connell, who was the Rams OC in 2020 and 2021? No? Still not convinced? Got him to win 14 games with Sam Darnold. I know J.J. McCarthy hasn't looked great. Maybe you hold that against him. But again, if we're just talking about specifically offense. And by the way, the Rams won the Super Bowl in 2020, so he was the OC for that team. How about Jacksonville head coach Liam Cohen was the OC for the Rams back in 2022? The list goes on and on and on. The Sean McVay coaching tree is legit. So I think Nate Scheelhaase is a tremendous option for the New York Giants. He's still available. And I think, again, with all that he's learned in those 2 seasons, albeit just 2 seasons, many of these guys on the list that I just named have only been with the Rams for a couple of seasons before another team snatched him up and they were able to prosper and be great for those years afterwards. So I think while he's available, get him while it's hot, because the Rams, they're not going anywhere. The Sean McVay tree might be the Nick Saban coaching tree in a couple of years of the NFL. The kind of exposure and experience that he has developed and that he has gotten there, working with some of the guys like Matthew Stafford and just other veterans on an offense, like, I think that's invaluable experience. I think he'd be perfect for John Harbaugh and for the New York Giants. The only thing that worries me is that Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur, he just got hired as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. The fact that that guy has now left the building opens up their offensive coordinator position. And with the amount of hype Nate Scheelhaase has been involved in with other teams, this is the obvious choice for the Rams to hire within. We'll see if that's what they do. They have not filled that position yet, but that is the only thing that is really going against the Giants' case to land him, is that the Rams might want to keep him internally. Now, the next name I had on the list as of about an hour ago just got scooped up. It was Davis Webb. I had a whole list of information on him prepared, but again, I'll save you that because, again, he's hired to be the Denver Broncos offensive coordinator, which was going to be the only caveat after I gave you everything I had on Webb, because he was their passing game coordinator this past season. They fired their OC, Joe Lombardi, and so he then became the favorite to fill in that position. And again, as of 3:45 on February 2nd, that is what happened. So Davis Webb off the list because he's not available anymore. Former Giant quarterback, that would have been kind of cool to have him back in the Meadowlands. Now, the next name on the list that's a viable option, Cliff Kingsbury. I think that this is a name that's been circulated more recently. And again, it's all because Todd Monken being hired by the Browns. Now you're starting to hear a lot more names be thrown out there because Harbaugh's number one option is not available. Cliff Kingsbury, to me, maybe underrated is not the right word, but I think a lot of people look at him and they associate his time with the Cardinals. And while it wasn't a great tenure as his head coach when he was with the Cardinals, a lot of people look at that and kind of define him by it. I think there's a lot to unpack when it comes to Cliff Kingsbury and a lot of history that I don't think gets talked about enough with when it comes to his resume and what he's done over the years in the sport of football at the collegiate level and in the professional level. So let's start from the beginning. I'll try and make it short and sweet, but I think it's important to include all of this for context because, again, similar to Nate Shieldhouse, I think the experience that Kingsbury has developed over the years means a lot when it comes to filling in this position, especially when it comes to coaching a guy like Jackson Dart heading into year two. So he got his start in coaching at the University of Houston back in 2008 and 2009. He was their offensive quality control coach. Then in 2010, promoted to the quarterback coach, and in 2011 became the co-offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. Now, why do I bring that up? He most notably worked with Case Keenum in 2009, where Keenum set multiple NCAA records for most passing yards. This is in a career with over 19,200 yards, most passing touchdowns with 155, and seasons with 5,000 plus yards passing with 3. For those who don't know, college seasons consist of 12 games, and back then there was no college football playoff or any of that nonsense that we have. I shouldn't say nonsense, but there was not a 4-game playoff, 5-game playoff. It was a bowl game, and that was it. So 13 games at most a season to have 5,000 passing yards is insane. The Bears are still looking for a 4,000-yard passer, and they play now 17 games, just to give you an idea of what he did with Houston. So that's just a name to put out there. Then he was hired to be the offensive coordinator with Texas A&M in 2012, where he coached, you might have heard of him, Johnny Manziel, Money Manziel. Might have heard of the guy. In his freshman season, that's the year that they had the magical year that he won the Heisman. They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, a place where Nick Saban at that time rarely lost a game at home. I mean, that was a big year for A&M, and Cliff Kingsbury was the offensive coordinator, worked with Johnny Manziel, hands-on. Can't discount him for that. So after that year, he then gets hired to be the head coach for Texas Tech in 2013. And he had that position until 2018, coaching notable quarterbacks such as Baker Mayfield before he transferred to Oklahoma, Patrick Mahomes, and, funny enough, Davis Webb before he transferred to Cal. I mean, when you think of the NFL, right, Patrick Mahomes, no-brainer. If you were starting a team over right now, Patrick Mahomes probably goes first. Baker Mayfield has had an up-and-down career, but as of late with the Buccaneers has looked great. And in 2019, after his tenure with Texas Tech, gets hired to be the head coach in Arizona. And again, a lot of people attribute that time to be a bit of a failure for him. But he coached Kyler Murray, another dual-threat quarterback that could throw and run when he was drafted out of Oklahoma, right? Another Heisman winner with Oklahoma. In his first year, finished 5-10-1. Second season, 8-8. Third season, finished 11-6. Got blown out in the playoffs by the Rams. Then in his final year, finished 4-13, and he was fired. So that was the end of his tenure in Arizona. So what has he been up to since the Arizona Cardinals days? Well, he was he spent some time with USC as, I believe, an offensive specialist or assistant. So again, working with a guy like Lane Kiffin, another offensive guru in the college world, right? Now, fast forward to 2024 and 2025, he was the offensive coordinator with the Washington Commanders. And we all know how special of a season Jaden Daniels had in his rookie year, how special of a season the Commanders had in general in that 2024 season. They went to the NFC Championship game. Yes, they got blown out by the Eagles, but so did the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That Eagles team was just great, and it was a crazy season for the Commanders. And in 2025, it all just fell apart. Jaden Daniels got hurt in Week 9, dislocated the elbow. Then he re-aggravated it again in Week 14. They sat him out the rest of the season. And it was Marcus Mariota at the helm for the Commanders for the majority of the season. Was not a great year for the Commanders offensively, so the two sides agreed to part ways. So now he is available. Why do I think he's a great option for the Giants? Again, the biggest thing to me is the list of quarterbacks that he has worked with in his career as a coach, whether it be a quarterback coach, whether it be an offensive coordinator, whether it be a head coach. I don't care. The names that I mentioned, Case Keenum, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Jaden Daniels, him working with that list of quarterbacks is nuts. And you look at some of them outside of Keenum and maybe Baker, they all can run. Kyler and Jaden more than, and Manziel, even though he doesn't play anymore, more than Mahomes, but Mahomes has shown an ability to run. I think this experience with this style of play from quarterbacks, especially with recently having coached Murray and Daniels, translates pretty damn well to what we're looking for with Jackson Dart, with his rushing ability, with his throwing ability. Now, the way I view Cliff Kingsbury, I view it similarly to Brian Dable in the sense that I don't think they can coach teams as a head coach. But when it comes to coaching an offense and developing a quarterback and creating an offensive style around that quarterback, I think they can do a great job at that. And that's what this job entails. We're not asking him to coach defense. We're not asking him to make staff hires. We're just asking him to create an offensive scheme around a guy like Jackson Dart, have him ascend his game to the next level, and hope that it translates to more wins. And I think Cliff Kingsbury can do that. It's important to note that the Giants held a virtual interview with Kingsbury this past Saturday on January 31st. So the Giants are looking at him as an option to hold that position. Don't be surprised if in the coming days he's hired as their OC. They're doing their due diligence. They had the interview with him already. Now, the last name that I have on my list, and I know it's kind of a shorter list, but again, Davis Webb being scooped up mid-recording does not help my case. Charlie Weiss Jr. is a long shot, and for good reason. He has pretty much declined the Eagles job. I don't know if they offered it to him, but he interviewed for it and wasn't really interested in it. So all signs have pointed towards him staying at LSU as their offensive coordinator under head coach Lane Kiffin. Again, his background from Ole Miss. He coached Jackson Dart in college. That's the big draw here for me. 3 seasons, in fact, with Jackson Dart helped him ascend his game in college, and I think could take him to the next level in the pros. And the familiarity with Jackson Dart, to me, is enticing. So I think this is why I have Weiss on the list. I think his relationship with Dart, the experience he has coaching with Dart in college is big. That can't be replicated from another candidate. And I think he's the best guy to create the scheme around Dart, and he arguably knows Dart's style of play the best, just because he's worked with him for so long up to this point. So again, it's a long shot because he has shown that he is committed to LSU with Lane Kiffin, and he's not really budging, but I figured it was worth throwing out there regardless. Now, some other names that have been mentioned around the coaching carousel: former head coach of the Titans, Brian Callahan; Chargers quarterback coach Shane Day; Colts offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter; and Colts passing game coordinator Alex Tanney. Yes, the former Giants quarterback Alex Tanney. Let's start with Shane Day, who was viewed as a mentor for quarterback Justin Herbert with the Chargers. He reportedly interviewed with the Giants on January 31st, same day as Cliff Kingsbury. If I had to guess, that was also a virtual interview. For me, I'm not as high on Shane Day, maybe as you out there or some others around. To me at least, the Chargers offense was built on run first, and as a team, that was their look: run first, play defense. And while Justin Herbert is a tremendous quarterback, I don't think Shane Day has that big of an impact on a guy like Herbert. I think he is coach proof in the sense that no matter who is telling him what to do, what plays they're drawing up, I think he's a good enough quarterback to put up stats. He just has the talent to not need to rely on a coach to get him to that next level. So I take it with a grain of salt what he's done with the Chargers. And again, the Chargers passing offense has not really impressed me, at least this year. Now, you can say it was because of Joe Alt and it was because of Rashawn Slater getting hurt earlier on in the year, and maybe they couldn't rely on their line as much to throw. It just didn't impress me all that much from Herbert and from this passing offense, and I think you saw it in that playoff game against the Pats. They could not do anything in the passing game, and I just was not too impressed. The other name, Brian Callahan, I mentioned. While his tenure with Tennessee was not great, I do think he didn't get a fair shake. I mean, think about this, right? You get hired in 2024, you get the first pick. Everyone in the building goes, we're not trading this pick, even though the Giants offered probably a king's ransom for it. We're going to take Cam Ward. He's the quarterback of the future. And again, for those who don't know, Brian Callahan was the offensive coordinator with the Bengals for a long time with Joe Burrow and all that. So he has the experience of coaching a guy like Burrow and a first overall pick and receivers. And so that's his background. So into 2025, they can him after 6 weeks, 1-5. Again, imagine that. Like, it's not like he had been with the Titans for 5 years before this and was not good. And this is this first year with his prized possession quarterback, the guy he's been waiting to draft, and they fire him after 6 weeks because they didn't see any improvement. So I don't think he got a fair shake in Tennessee. So while I keep that in mind, I'm not all that impressed, again, because as I mentioned, him being an offensive coordinator in Cincinnati and Zach Taylor being their head coach who called plays, I don't know how much of an impact or involvement he had in drawing up scheme plays, in calling plays, and just designing of plays, stuff like that. So I don't know to what capacity that is. And although I acknowledge he's worked with great talent with the Bengals, I just don't know if I would view him as a better option than a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, who calls plays, who designs schemes, who's worked with really, really good offensive minded guys who's worked with just the laundry list of quarterbacks that he has, or Nate Shieldhouse for that matter, solely because of Sean McVay. I just don't know if the Brian Callahan move is the right move for me. As for Jim Bob Cooter and for Alex Tanney, the Giants are awaiting approval from the Colts to formally interview them. So until that happens, until they interview them, I'll give you my thoughts on them. But as for right now, it's up in the air whether or not they can even interview the two of them. So I'm not going to give you my opinions on them. In summary, for me, if I had a choice, it's between Nate Shieldhouse or Cliff Kingsbury, solely because of the Sean McVay tree, that being a pretty reliable source from coaching, especially on the offensive side. And in the case of Cliff Kingsbury, just the experience that he has had over the years working with talented quarterbacks, turning them into talented quarterbacks, and getting some really crazy seasons from them. The Johnny Manziel Heisman year, the Jaden Daniels rookie season where he set a rookie record for most rushing yards by a quarterback, 891. I think these two are the best options for Jackson Dart for that jump that we're looking to see in year two of Dart being at the helm with the Giants. And again, Harbaugh is a CEO type of coach. He's not going to call plays for either side of the ball. So it's Denard Wilson calling defensive plays, and it's going to be whoever they decide to hire on the offensive side. So with that in mind, I think just the experience of Kingsbury is invaluable. And I think that, the guys that he's worked with is a great list of guys at the quarterback position for Dart. And Nate Shieldhouse, it just seems that you can't really miss when it comes to hiring from the McVay tree. So those are the lists of names that I have for the Giants offensive coordinator position on the staff. Let me know in the comments who you think should be their offensive coordinator, whether you agree or disagree with me on some of these guys. We'll have a discussion in the comments. And again, stay tuned. Later this week, I'm going to post a video on the Super Bowl previewing the matchup between the Seahawks and the Patriots. It's going to be a fun one this Sunday. My early inkling is to take the Seahawks. I just think they're the better defensive team, and I think it comes down to whether or not Sam Darnold can play a clean game. Doesn't have to throw for 3 touchdowns, 400 yards, but he can't throw 2 picks and expect that Seahawks defense to bail him out multiple times. So it should be a fun one. I'm hoping it's a close game. I'm hoping it's a classic like the first meeting we got with the Seahawks and the Patriots back in 2015. I'm not hoping for the same outcome, but in terms of a close game, that's a historic Super Bowl moment right there. So anyway, that video will come out later this week. Leave a like, click that subscribe button, ring the bell so that you're notified every time I post on here. Follow my social media handles. I'll put them right here as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you next time for the Super Bowl preview later this week.